episode 3 of the FEZZIWIG report. I am Jeremy Goldstein, the Christmas Jew. I am here with my dear friend Phil Duvall, who's on mute, and you can't see him laughing right now. But I'm here with Phil Duvall, who is my dear friend and a priest in the Episcopal Church. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you for having me, Christmas Jew.
It's funny to see you cracking up at that, and yet nobody else can see you cracking up.
No, I know I'm laughing. Well, because I'm not laughing for them, I'm laughing for me because it's fun.
But we were at first robbed of your beautiful Christmas antlers.
Every time you say it, it's funny.
We were robbed of your Christmas antlers.
My Christmas antlers.
Yeah.
Oh, check this out. I didn't know they did this. I was trying. There's lights in them. Look, they light up. And I think I tried to stop it, but it doesn't stop. So I think you just have to wait for it to stop.
It's on a timer.
I guess we'll find out. But you're all festive as well. So wait.
Yes, you can tell as we get closer and closer that we're getting more Christmassy, which is. We're getting so Christmassy. We got a shepherd here.
And apparently this was not planned at all.
Nope, it wasn't. Look at that. We got a sheep and a shepherd here.
Guys, thank you guys. Bye now.
I'll tell you, this is gold.
They're getting ready for the pageant, which will be an online pageant for the first time ever.
Very glad to hear that. Very glad to hear your church is having an online, safely distanced pageant.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We're doing everything we can to. We've been distanced and almost entirely remote. We were doing some outdoor stuff for a minute, and then our governor got on, got on the TV and said, "Hey, could people just stop gathering altogether, not just indoors?"
Of course. Well, it's exciting that people are finding new and good ways to safely
100%. But I've got this, but you're wearing a tie, and I want to know about what's going on with this tie.
Oh yeah, so I have a few Christmas ties. People love ugly Christmas sweaters. I'm not much of a sweater person.
Right.
And really, I shouldn't own that much Christmas apparel. Like, I didn't grow up celebrating Christmas. Like, I didn't grow up in like a bifurcated household where we had Hanukkah and Christmas. I just really like Christmas. But like, I would go to Ross Dress for Less and just find the ugliest Christmas ties I could find. So here's a delightful one. You can't see it below the line, but there's Santa at the North Pole with his penguins. I don't even know if that's real.
Hanging out with penguins, which I think are South Pole, but
you know what? It's Christmas. Santa can do whatever he wants. Hey, tell me about your Christmas beverage today.
This is the simplest beverage yet. It's a glass of rye whiskey from Angel's Envy. But the reason that I'm drinking it is it's just about the last of a Christmas gift. Someone gave it to me as a Christmas gift 2 years ago, and I've been drinking it very slowly because it's such a cool gift. So I'm going to finish it off this Christmas. And this is about the last of it. So
I guess this Christmas really will be a very special Christmas as you get wasted on.
Because I'm drunk.
Yeah,
no, nothing funnier than priests joking about being drunk on Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you? What do you got in there?
This is pretty basic. This is a peppermint hot chocolate that I spiked with bourbon.
Why not?
I was thinking whiskey, but then I read a recipe and they were like, go with bourbon. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. A little sweet. I got that in here. I'm glad that we both have cocktails today, or because you've been rocking the Christmas beers, and I have a pretty good supply that we'll talk about in our final episode. Can you believe we're halfway through? Actually,
it's gone too quickly for me.
Mm.
Well, I wish I could live Christmas every day of the year, just like someone we know and love.
Well, it's been fun, and we're only halfway through. We have so much to talk about today, so let's dive right into it.
Great.
We're dealing with some text stuff today, which is it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun, I promise.
Don't go away.
Talking about words. Actually, it's funny because I always keep my copy of the book handy, and of course I don't even know where it is right now. I can't. It's up somewhere in this table, but I always keep my copy of the book. Instead, I'll just ring the bell because our first segment today is Know Me Better Man.
Know me better, man.
Know Me Better Man. If this were a dissertation, the subtitle, it would be Know Me Better Man, : it's important for a dissertation.
Always.
The Ghost of Christmas Present is the Jesus Christ, Dionysus, Santa Claus mashup you did not know you needed in your life.
That is a long part after the colon. Could it just be Know Me Better Man, : not about the Pearl Jam song? Could we do that?
Yeah. Yes. No.
Know Me Better Man.
No, that would lower the word count on the cover.
Fair enough.
But you've mentioned before the Ghost of Christmas Present is a really key figure for you, which I'm really happy about because I think he's a key figure for me too, probably for similar and or different reasons. But we've talked about in past episodes, we talked about how clearly defined the Ghost of Christmas Present is in the book, the way he is described, more so than the Ghost of Christmas Past, which is kind of ethereal, figure of light. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future, which is pretty basic. What's that?
Christmas Past is sort of intentionally ambiguous. Like they create something that's kind of foggy and hard to perfectly understand.
Right.
But the Ghost of Christmas Present is very clearly defined.
And there's a drawing which we showed.
Drawing of it. There's an illustration of it.
Yeah, there's an illustration of the Ghost of Christmas Present. I don't think there's an illustration of at least the first Ghost in the original John Leach illustrations, but there's an illustration of the Ghost of Christmas Present. So we've talked about the Ghost of Christmas Present in relation to adaptations.
Right.
But based on the description, I'll just give a quick overview of the description. First of all, bigger than life. There's this impression in the book, Scrooge gets called into another room in his house that in some way has been transformed, like in a dream, like when it's your house, but it's not your house. Like the room is just bigger than life. Yeah. The character, the physical depiction of the character is that he is big, he's bearded, actually, I don't know if they describe him with a beard in the book, probably they do, but he's jolly, he's wearing kind of a robe, like a Christmas robe that has trimmings on it, so that's where you get a little bit of the Santa Claus, like Father Christmas kind of feel. He has a wreath on his head in the drawing, might not be in the text, and like I said, I wish I had the book. I'm terribly prepared for this, but that's what people recognize when they see. So tell us a little bit about like your feelings about the symbolism of what he looks like and why he is that way.
What it's worth saying is whether or not it's written in the text, there's not one adaptation of it that doesn't show him that way. So they're all, I mean, that I can think of.
You mean with the wreath specifically, or
a whole bit? I mean, the whole he is consistently portrayed throughout all of the adaptations that I can think of right now.
There's one where he doesn't have a beard. I think that's probably the most.
I know Mickey's Christmas Carol, he doesn't have a beard because they're more intent on having specific characters play the part.
Right.
By the way, side note, if we were going to cast this thing with professional wrestlers, it would be Hillbilly Jim from my growing up. Had the big beard, was overly tall, super like jovial, but you don't mess with him.
I'm gonna take your word on that.
Yeah, I was a big WWF fan back when it was WWF. Okay, so I always grew up. I didn't know much about like the Dionysus myth, but like he was very clearly connected to Santa Claus for me, and that's where the jolliness and the festivity came from. What fascinates me now is now that I'm a professional Christian and an adult and I've spent a lot of time with this stuff, while I wouldn't say that he represents necessarily Jesus, he represents Christianity more than either of the other two ghosts do. He represents the Christian, and he represents actually, in my mind, the personality of Jesus more than anyone else in the book. And so what I want, and since we've talked about how that Christmas Carol is meant to sort of point people back towards the actual celebration of Christmas and this sort of underlying tone of like believe in Jesus, like that's kind of, it's not officially the thing, but it's there.
Right.
So here's the thing about Jesus, right? Is Jesus is both really, really like people want to get closer to him in the stories. They want to be near him. They want to get closer. And also he's really perplexing when you try to mess with him. And he's genuinely indignant about people who don't recognize the beauty and the holiness of other people. And what I love about the best interpretations of the Ghost of Christmas Present is that he is both jovial and like there is an edge to him.
Oh yeah.
And he calls, in every version, he calls Scrooge to account more than any of them, which to me that's a very, very Christ-like move. Like that's really consistent with the character of Jesus.
It's almost all right, so sarcasm's not the right word, but he does use Scrooge's own words back at him. So it's exposing hypocrisy, which definitely feels like something right out of biblical.
It's one of my favorite parts in the whole thing.
Right. And there's a speak truth to power element too.
Uh-huh.
So even though, you know, you wouldn't say that like the ghost of Christmas Present is less powerful than Scrooge, like in a power dynamic, he's obviously more powerful. He's a spirit and he's a ghost. Right. But there's a little bit of like, he doesn't care who he's talking to. He's going to speak truth to power. He's going to expose your hypocrisy. He's going to expose your own words against you. But for a good reason. It's not to tear them down. It's to build them up. Now, I just want to say, what's your biggest clue? You know, you should know the answer to this. What's your biggest clue that he's directly tied to Christ? It's in the text. It's one of his first lines.
That he's white and has a beard? Wait, no.
Well,
it's
that's if he was Middle Eastern and had a beard.
It's how many brothers and sisters he has, which is how many years there have been since Christ was.
Right, which if you're just casually watching, that's a line that makes sense. You know, if you're reading, that's a line that makes sense. Okay, well, we've been celebrating Christmas for 1,800 years. Right, why have we been celebrating?
There's 1,800, right.
In actuality, we haven't been celebrating for 1,800. But it directly ties him to Christ in that moment. Like it's not just a clever, and it is really a clever bit about time and what time means. I've had 18 brothers because I'm the ghost of Christmas Present, so I'm here for Christmas and then I'm gone. And you can kind of surmise that they all look and act exactly the same. Yeah. Like, I love that. Like, they're not, it's maybe like a little Doctor Who kind of thing, where it's just a different incarnation, but they kind of act the same. I actually have never seen Doctor Who. Please do not, no trolls.
I
don't watch Doctor Who. So if I just completely got Doctor Who wrong.
We'll be lost on us if you try.
I don't want to do it. But yes, now, so he very clearly evokes Christ, probably most of all. We talked a little bit about Santa. The Dionysian part is fascinating to me. And and this is where it comes from for me. You know, Santa Claus. This is written in 1843, so it's Father Christmas, and I don't know much about like the depiction of Father Christmas or Saint Nicholas in English literature, but I have to assume it's pretty similar. He's bringing presents to kids and things like that. Not necessarily tied in with like huge feasts and like drinking wine and like grapes all over the place. I feel like some of the images of him, the Ghost of Christmas Present, it's like. It's not just that there's like 1,000 turkeys on the floor, like, you know, not like cooked turkeys, you know, big feast. And that's very Dionysian. Dionysus, pictured usually, I think, with a wreath with a laurel around his head. So now you've got a Santa Claus wreath, you've got a Dionysian, like the laurels from a Greek, you know, pagan god, and you've got a crown of thorns on the guy. Right. It's like the common thread between three like hugely important characters in Western civilization, and so he's just kind of marriage of religious Christmas, pagan festivals about Christmas, the winter solstice, and then Santa Claus, which is tying them together in a way. It's a brilliant. Yeah.
So, but what's fascinating is, and Jeremy, where are they all tied together? In what time? In what tense? Past, present, or future?
In the present.
This is so important.
Yeah.
This is so important because the call to action is now. It's not later, right? It's not about believing the right things so you go to the right place when you die. It is about recognizing it's about recognizing your job. As Jacob Marley's ghost says, business, mankind was my business. And so what the Ghost of Christmas Present, as the Christ figure, as we've said, points out is, or takes us to, is that place where his job is to clue Scrooge into what it looks like to actually recognize that blessing now. Mm-hmm. So where does he take him? All the places where Scrooge isn't, and they are experiencing what? Joy. All the places he takes them.
It's the original FOMO. It's the original FOMO.
He's like, I should be at this party. They're dancing, they're playing Blind Man's Bluff.
Exactly. And it's usually in those scenes, you couldn't do the Christmas Present without the Christmas Past, because not only do you as the reader or viewer get set up for these like characters and the backstory of Scrooge's life that kind of made him this way, and get lonely and get sad and he lost the people, but on his own fault. It's not like, some of them not his own fault. His sister certainly wasn't his fault. She died. But like he lost or he alienated people and he became more alone. And then in the present, he sees the actual effects of that. And when you say he goes where he's not, That's absolutely right. A Christmas day for him is he sits at home, he doesn't do anything, he's mad that everybody else is having fun, but he doesn't actually know what that fun is. And so now he sees it, and that's where you see.
Or he might go to the office and be by himself.
Yeah, he probably does. I mean,
because
yeah.
The Ghost of Christmas Past shows him that vision of the woman he was gonna marry.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be on a Christmas because that's what they showed them as days of Christmas.
Exactly.
Guess who I saw today walking through town? Yeah. I was walking through town and I saw Scrooge sitting at his desk while his partner is on his deathbed.
Yep.
Like, so that's probably where he would go, his work.
Yep. That would have actually been passed, but I know there are some versions that show what a present looks like. Actually, the Alistair Sim version, that scene is different, and I'm gonna really enjoy telling you why it's different. But it's but yes, and in some versions it's past, some versions it's present. But more importantly, you see Bob Cratchit, and Scrooge gets to see the effect he actually has on this whole family. He sees it in real time. Yeah. It's fascinating to see in some versions when the scene comes up and Cratchit wants to do a toast to Scrooge, which is a genuinely like nice gesture because we know how he must really feel about Scrooge, but he's teaching his kids, be respectful or care about people no matter what. And some play it really angrily, Mrs. Cratchit and the kids, and some play it really nicely. My favorite, I think, is that he sees Fred's wife, who it's kind of implied that he's never met, or his fiance.
Oh yeah, I agree.
It's implied he's never met, so he sees what their life is like, and it connects Fred to Fran, his sister, because he even has a line. I think it's in the text, but it's definitely in versions. I had kind of forgotten that guy was the son of my sister, who I love.
He literally says it.
Right.
Oh, right. Oops.
The Ghost of Christmas Present is so key for all of those reasons. You asked me last time where I think the turn happens. And in some versions, I think it's very clearly in the Ghost of Christmas Present, because the past, it's a little bit like he gets wistful, he gets sad. He does the wheels turn when he's with Fezziwig, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm someone's boss. Yeah. But it doesn't make the connection until he actually sees other people. And that's really what the story's about at its heart.
If he had woken up after that, and that was the last ghost to have visited him, the Christmas Past, he would have maybe been slightly less mean to Bob Cratchit for half a day, and then gone. Right?
That's a great point, because we're always
it gets the ball rolling and puts in front of him how he used to be, reminds him of the path he was on. That's important. Yeah. But it's the Ghost of Christmas Present that shows him the way things are right now. While he's got all that stuff cooking in his head from the past, present is now, and people are having a good time, and they're poor and they're singing, and they're in the jailhouses and they're singing.
That's a little Grinchy right there. That's exactly.
They're whistles, and they sing without wazzles and schnozzles. And
but you're exactly right, and you're 100% right that's the feeling about what he's showing, but also that he could wake up after that second ghost and be a slightly better person. You kind of feel that, but that's actually one of the really interesting things about having the Ghost of Christmas Future, which is that it's a very common theme in Christmas material. Keep the Christmas spirit all year round. Why do we have to be told that? Because at midnight on Christmas, the Ghost of Christmas Present disappears.
And then what will you do?
But the Ghost of Christmas Future is going to be there, the same ghost every year for the future. That's getting a little
I love that. We have a question then. So is there a specific moment, and it might be different episode to episode or to adaptation, but is there a moment for you that you see as sort of the real, like the turning point, the real during the Christmas Present vignette?
No, and here's why. It's you kind of talked me out of my own argument.
Oh, go ahead.
You kind of talked me out of my own argument. The point of the story is to teach someone to completely change their life.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's a conversion. And we've talked about the anti-Semitic imagery of the story. Permeates the story and its point.
Yeah.
And so you're right. he'd be a nice guy for a couple of days, and then, you know, it's the same thing with anybody else. Like, think about like the last time you had like a life-changing revelation, you know, and well, it's a huge epiphany, and I'm finally, you know, I'm finally over this one thing that I had. And like 2 days later, you go to the supermarket and someone cuts you off on the freeway, and like
You're like,
the
nah.
lines are long, and then you get grouchy, you get angry again. That's why we have to be told every year, keep the Christmas spirit, or keep the joy all year long. In this case, all of those lessons would be meaningless if he forgot 3 days later. You know, he could give Bob Cratchit a raise that week, and then 3 weeks later say, you know what, I take that back. But the Ghost of Christmas Future is the one that shows him, you're gonna die.
But I think the ghost, there's a moment, I totally agree. You're gonna die. It's not just that you're gonna die. You're gonna die, and you've already seen how people will feel about you. You're going to die having
Yes. And all of those things about how people are going to remember you after you're gone should be good enough, especially built on Marley's point at the very beginning. Look, when you're dead, you can't help people, and you will regret that. And that's bolstered by not only what the Ghost of Future shows him, because Tiny Tim dies, can't do anything. Tiny Tim's dead. But it's also bolstered by, not only can you not do anything about helping other people, you can't do anything about what people will say about you when you're dead.
Nothing.
And then you'll be gone and lost, and no one will care. And or if they care, they'll be happy, which is even worse.
Oh my gosh, you just made me realize something. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, all I wanted to say is that all of those things would be good enough, but that's not where Dickens stops. Dickens goes all the way to showing the guy his grave, and the implicit thing in there that, again, ties together the secular and the religious, the Christian, the Christmas, and the Christ in Christmas, which, as a warrior against Christmas, a lifelong warrior against Christmas.
A lifelong anti.
I'm going to get to the point. Christ offers you eternal life.
Mm-hmm.
There's no denying that. Everything that you told us, you're a priest, and I respect everything that you say about this, is 100% true. That's Christ. That's the depiction of him in gospel, in stories. That's what we hear from him. Everything you said, all of the good he did in teaching people during his life. But fundamentally, the religious aspect is belief in Christ means everlasting life in heaven. You will, right? And so that you can't escape that. So you can't escape that message, because Dickens puts it right there. Everyone's going to die, and yet why show him his grave like it's the worst thing in the world? He already knows he's going to die.
He's going to die at some point, right?
Yeah. So that's where it's actually, to me, the subtext is, this is a miserly Jew who is a moneylender. He charges ridiculous interest. By the way, every adaptation you see where he's like a landlord, that's not in the book. He's not a landlord. He's a moneylender. He's charging people terrible interest. They're going bankrupt because of him. That is all usury that goes back to the medieval times, in not the restaurant medieval times, but it goes back to like the medieval ages, and like the Jews on the banks.
I hope they don't have utensils there.
Yeah. So it's like some of that stuff that's baked in there.
Yeah.
You know, but you were going to say, I made you realize something.
Well, no, I was thinking about when you die. You were saying that when you die, you can't control, not only you can't help anybody, but you also can't help what they say about you.
Right.
Which means when he's in the present and he gets to be a spirit watching people talk about him, it's as if he's already dead.
Oh.
I know.
Yeah.
You help me think of that, because that's what he experiences. He experiences Mrs. Cratchit, and he can't defend himself. He experiences the beauty and the charity of Bob, and he can't help him. He experiences them teasing him at Fred's house, but also Fred talking about how much he loves him, and he can neither defend himself nor can he embrace the love and the kindness that's being shown him. He has nothing. He can just sit, he can do nothing with it, and that is like he's already dead.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
Absolutely.
So
there's a level of, there's nothing he can do in the present. There's nothing he would be able to do in the future. And by the end, he's learned that lesson. And it's literally, I want to close on something, because I think it's a good analogy.
Yeah.
But, I learned a long time ago that, like, the moment you quit smoking, your lungs start to heal.
That's right.
The moment every time you have a cigarette and then you're done with it, your lungs are starting to heal. Something like that. Again.
No, that's right.
Doctors, feel free to correct us in the comments.
They immediately are like, let's start trying to get better and not be this way.
Yeah. And
that's when you're like, another cigarette, quickly.
Yeah, and then you ruin it when you have another cigarette. So it's like the moment he wakes up and he's saying, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. There's a little bit of fear. I think he's afraid. He's afraid he's going to die. He's afraid. He's not afraid of hell. I can't stress that enough. The book has nothing about hell in it. He's afraid that he'll be dead. He's afraid that, I guess, tying back to, he's afraid that he'll be a ghost and punished, but it's not hell punishment. We talked about that before.
Right.
It's that he will be hindered from doing anything to help people. So the implication is that as a ghost, as a believer in Christmas, a believer in Christ, he could be a ghost who could actually do good in the world. He could be part of the kingdom of heaven. All subtext. It is not, I want to make that clear.
I want to say one last thing about in this area.
Okay. Well, all I was going to say, it's not anti-Jewish propaganda. Otherwise, I didn't like it.
It's not anti-Jewish propaganda. It's just anti-Semitic by nature.
It's baked in the fabric. It's baked in the fabric of like English literature. I mean, right. Dickens had already written Oliver Twist at this point. Fagin is a Jew, and he's like a molester, and he's evil. It's like pure evil. And then at the end, there's a subtle like imagery that he gets converted on his march to the gallows. But like, let's not talk about that. But like, we don't have to make the argument that there's anti-Semitism in British specifically literature and all of Western civilization. It's been going on for thousands of years. But like, it's all in there. Yeah. And even if it was in his subconscious, like he wasn't purposely trying to do it, it's all baked into the story. And it's important for things I want to talk about later. But you go ahead.
So I do think that there is, I don't think any specific moment. I mean, really the moment where it seals it is him seeing his grave. It's played that way. That's obvious. It's necessary. But I think the turning point is Tiny Tim. And you and I have talked about how Tiny Tim as a character is not that exciting of a character in the book. But he represents all of the things that help Scrooge come to Jesus, so to speak, including when the Ghost of Christmas Present throws his line back at him, perhaps he should die and decrease the surplus population, which every time gets me. But then it must be in the book because it's in at least 2 of the movie versions. He says, I don't know, but essentially he says to Scrooge, I don't know who you think you are thinking you know who the surplus population is.
Oh yeah. Why don't you look around? Yeah.
Just to be clear, that in the kingdom of heaven, it's very possible that he's necessary and you're the surplus.
Yeah.
And like, that is the freaking point of the whole story, that from that moment. And I like to think about things from those moments where they hit, what comes from before is building that, and what comes after is pointing back to that and is the aftermath. So to me, the visit to the Cratchit's house is for me the centerpiece of Christmas Carol. Mm-hmm. And it is and we'll talk about it when we talk about the Alistair Sim version next episode. I have a lot to say about it then, but it is that space where it all kind of breaks open.
1,000%. And you're absolutely right. And it's that level, it's that compassion. It's what he learns just from what he learns from the figure of Tiny Tim, but also what he learns from listening to Tiny Tim himself and hearing what Bob Cratchit says, things he says to other people. It's an excellent point. This is our signal. There's so much to talk about with the Ghost of Christmas Present, but we got to move on, everybody. We got to move on. Because there's no time like the present for us to get to something we've really wanted to talk about for a long time, which is what is an adaptation and what is not an adaptation. So this is a segment called
Adaptation
or Not Adaptation, and it stars really the movie Scrooged.
Yes. which is by far the Christmas Carol adaptation or not adaptation that I have watched the most times.
It's a film that so many people will tell you is their favorite Christmas movie or a version of A Christmas Carol.
Yep.
Why don't you talk us through a little bit about like your history with Scrooge? Because it's an interesting movie just in terms of what it is, what its relationship to A Christmas Carol is, and also the story behind it, which I don't know if you know much.
A little bit. Well, I rewatched it this week for the first time in 2 years. I didn't. Okay. Oh I skipped it last year not on purpose, but I didn't watch it last year, and so I watched it this year for the first time in 2 years, and then immediately started reading about, because I'd heard some things. The famous climax, the famous scene where he just basically riffs and monologues at the end. I had heard that was basically him riffing and monologuing and basically taking over and saying, we're going to try this. So I wanted to kind of look and see if there was any, now that Wikipedia exists, like, well, it's existed for a while, but now that we're using it the way we use it, I was like looking into it to try to like read more about how the movie was made and some of those things. And it was really fascinating. So I won't get into the history of how it was made, but in terms of its impact on me, I think it came out in 88 or 89. So I was 9 or 10. It was a big, Bill Murray was huge because of Ghostbusters for me. Ghostbusters was several years before.
He was a bona fide star at this point. Yeah.
But he was a bona fide star. Ghostbusters 2 would be right around the corner, but it hadn't come out yet. But Bill Murray really is, when I think of the comic people, I was big into comedy growing up, and I love comedy so much. And the comic actors that when I look back are the most formative on me are Bill Murray, Steve Martin, and John Candy. And then there's, after that, you got some folks like Billy Crystal and of course Eddie Murphy and Robin Williams. But for me, Bill Murray, Steve Martin, John Candy, those three really were huge for me. And Bill Murray, for a lot of people our generation. But anyways, so Scrooged showed up, and I don't know if you recall this, but it was very, very tied to MTV. Bobcat Goldthwait,
I have no idea what you mean.
So Bobcat Goldthwait was on it, who was not on MTV, but who was this sort of rock and roll-ish stand-up, who had also been in one of the Police Academy movies. I was also a big Police Academy fan at that age. I think he was in Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. But on top of that, the song at the end,
Put a Little Love in Your Heart.
Put a Little Love in Your Heart, was, I believe, Al Green and Annie Lennox. And the music video was on MTV and had clips from the movie. And it has this really like cartoonish vibe with Carol Kane as essentially a mean pixie who hits him with a toaster, and Buster Poindexter as the cab driver who inexplicably looks like the Ghost of Christmas Future from Mickey's Christmas Carol. He's got the same look, and he's
with the cigar.
Okay. Yeah, and Ben plus Bill Murray. So it just had all these elements to it that were really attractive to me, and I just watched it a bunch of times. So I'd seen Mickey's Christmas Carol and this. No one in my family had me watch Albert Finney or George C. Scott or any other or Alistair Sim or anything else. It was not a tradition in my family. So it was my introduction. Mickey was my introduction, and then Bill Murray was my second introduction. And that's how I learned the major beats of the story. Had Karen Allen from Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I mean, it hit all those marks for me.
It's I was trying to fact check the year it came out, because it had to be like 88, 89, and we should know.
Well, I know that it was before Ghostbusters 2, because what I read was it was his first starring role since Ghostbusters, and I believe Ghostbusters was 84.
Yeah, it's 88. So I just checked it.
So 88.
Look, it's
and that was right when pardon me, but that's right when Bon Jovi New Jersey album came out, and Bad Medicine video was a huge video for me, and I was watching MTV all the time. So that
I'm stymied by all of this, because I have no recollection of any of that. Now, I don't think we had cable at that point anyway.
Right.
So 88, 89, when it would have first come out. I don't remember any promotion around this movie. I don't remember seeing it in theaters. I remember watching it years later, like in the mid 90s, probably starting to watch it like on TV or on HBO if it was on around Christmas. And then, so I knew it for a long time, and now I watch it every year. It's one of my 5 favorite Christmas movies.
Yeah.
As I've said in this webcast before, it's not in my top favorite Christmas Carol movies adaptations, because it's not an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. It's inspired by A Christmas Carol movie.
But Scrooged, Jeremy.
Yeah, but it's not an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Look, I'm not so stupid and so basic.
I know.
And I'm like, no, it literally has to have a character named Ebenezer Scrooge in order to be an adaptation. In this case, I am. But I'm not that way about other things. If someone takes a novel and does something, it's still an adaptation of a novel. Probably the best example is Adaptation by Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah, good call.
That's Rick Jones. Like, of course that's an adaptation of The Orchid Thief. Right. It's completely whacked out. but no one, I'm not going to sit here and say like, well, it's not a 12-page New Yorker article. Like, so it's not an adaptation. Of course, and that movie's actually a lot about that type of thing. But in this case, it's not an adaptation for a few reasons. Like, you could do a modern adaptation of A Christmas Carol without tricking it out with these plot points that are not from the story. And I'm not criticizing it because I'm just saying it's inspired by, you can do, first of all, in 2020, what would be more topical than doing like a miserly billionaire,
right,
who owns a banking business?
Right.
It works perfectly. You could still do
even have to make it all kind of thing. Right. It would just,
you know what I mean? But it's not an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. I love the meta aspect that it's about a guy who's putting on an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Like, that's cute. I like that. What you just said about the ghosts is really key.
Yeah.
At the end, everything's hunky-dory, but through the movie, they're dangerous. Like, you don't feel like they really have his best interests at heart. And in the story, you do. You know what I mean?
You just want to punish.
What's that?
I was just going to also say 2020 would be great because anti-Semitism still wildly popular.
Yes. Yeah. But oh, by the way, his name is Frank Cross. Like, what in that? So like, oh, and it's Xavier Frank Cross. So like, we've got, they double down on that kind of thing.
Yeah, they really do.
The thing that you and I alluded to is that Bill Murray and Richard Donner have different views of what went wrong, but they're not happy. Neither one is completely happy with how it turned out, which is ridiculous because it's a perfect movie. For everything I just said, making it sound like I don't like it, of course I love it. But it's a perfect movie, like nearly perfect. But they apparently, I don't even know if they fought on set. You read different things, but it's like Bill Murray wanted it to be very improvisational, and Donner wanted to stick to the script. But to hear Bill Murray tell it, he was like, no, the script was perfect. I just didn't like where Richard Donner was pushing it. So you're never going to know what actually happened there. What I do know is when he is transformed and he wakes up, that's like the part Bill Murray was born to play.
It really is.
It's probably 25 minutes long, that whole.
And it's probably the most Bill Murray. It's probably the most authentic Bill Murray you're ever going to see on screen.
It feels that way, doesn't it? And that's where the improvisational aspects come in. Like,
I remember as a kid watching that and not understanding. By the way, not understanding at all that someone could improvise on film. Like, that wasn't the idea of that. Here's a script, people read lines.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that scene and being like, it's almost like he doesn't know what he's going to say. I remember thinking it.
Yeah.
Because he stumbles over some things and tries to get some stuff out and it doesn't come out, and then he like changes his wording. And now watching it as an adult, both as someone who has been an actor and as someone who preaches without a text. Now, I don't usually have a text when I preach. And as just a human who has lived and has watched people live like 40 years, like, what we are watching is someone being themselves on screen forever about something genuine and sincere and real. And it happens also just to be one of my favorite comic actors. Yeah. It
serves the point.
Oh, it does. It's so powerful.
The fact that he struggles to come up, there are moments where he doesn't know what to say. The fact that he's so, like, you can see joy, like, kind of like stuck in his throat at points where he just wants to exude and he doesn't know how to do it. And so it's wonderful. And it's tempered by the fact that in the script, so maybe Bill Murray was right. And maybe he did improvise that whole thing. We actually don't know. We assume, because that's what we figure Bill Murray is talking about. But like, maybe he didn't. Maybe that was all written in the script. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it wasn't, because the script also has Elliot Loudermilk holding the control room at gunpoint.
Right.
So again, like, in order to take over the TV station. So it's for a good point. But like, next time you watch it out there in webcast land, like, I'm not trying to ruin it for you, but think about the point of A Christmas Carol, and then think about whether or not you think it makes sense to have all of those people in the control room terrified. That censor from the network, even though we think it's funny, she gets tied up and bound and gagged. Like, it's funny, but like, is that really the spirit of A Christmas Carol? That's all I'm saying.
It wouldn't be an 80s movie without casual misogyny.
That's a fantastic point. I mean, she gets whacked in the head with a shovel. It's cartoon violence.
No, and there would it's the same as saying that it wouldn't be an English Christmas story from the 1800s without casual anti-Semitism. It's not. It's not that Bill Murray was like, how do we be misogynistic?
Yeah.
It's just misogyny is the name of the game.
It's just there. It's there because it's there
Yeah.
because when you're writing something in 1987 or 86,
Yeah.
that's funny to you, and it's
Totally
now
agree.
you watch it and it's problematic. Which reminds me, there were rumblings. I don't know if it's going to happen, but there were rumblings that there's a remake in the works. Had you heard about this?
No.
So it's another movie that I think for a lot of people it's like sacred text. You don't touch it.
Yeah.
But there are rumors, and I don't know how real they are, that there's going to be or they were trying to get a Kevin Hart remake, which is really interesting because you want to talk about someone who I think could improv that final scene very well.
Oh, sure.
And be hilarious and wonderful and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. But he's also like Bill Murray, at least early Bill Murray, not like the best actor, like a great comedian, but like I don't know that I don't know. That's the problem with a movie like this is that you have an hour to wait through someone acting. And Bill Murray, we now know, old Bill Murray, he's a great actor. And at the time, the seeds were there, but maybe sticking to the script was making him a little rigid through the whole thing. And so, Kevin Hart, again, like great casting for the end. How would he do for like the first hour? I don't know. But Scrooged it's a fantastic film. There are really clever bits that do harken back to the story. There's actually two that we'll talk about next time that I think are directly in reference to the Alistair Sim and George C. Scott versions. Like in the film, I think there's two references to that. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is there's blink and you'll miss it cameos of two people in there. Do you know who I'm talking about? You'll miss it. You'll completely miss it.
Say their names and I'll tell you where they were in the movie.
Oh, no, you won't.
There's the mom from Throw Mama from a Train. She's
really?
/ the mom from Goonies.
Yeah, she's in it?
She's one of the homeless ladies.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, okay. No, I was thinking specifically Paul Schaefer, which makes sense.
Oh yeah, Paul Schaefer's with Miles Davis.
Davis.
I didn't
bizarre,
I don't think until this time.
Yeah.
Miles,
I love it because then a few years ago
before he died.
I love it because a few years ago, A Very Merry Christmas came out on Netflix, and Paul Schaefer was the music director on that, and he's in it. And so it's like the two of them have this great, 25-year Christmas connection. There are other cameos too. Actually, one really endearing thing about the movie is that all four Murray brothers are in it.
Yes. So
yeah,
having his brother play his brother is glorious. Having his other brother play his father is glorious.
Yeah.
And then the other one is just one of the guests at the party.
No, I thought he was in the boardroom.
Nope, it's one of the guests at the party.
Is he?
He's one of the guests at the Christmas party with his brother.
Okay.
Playing the SS Minnow. That's
a cute touch though.
What's your most quoted line from that movie? And then I'll let it go.
Oh, you know what it is.
It's SS Minnow, James, right?
The SS Minnow, James.
So for me, I love that line, but it's not my most personally quoted line.
Yeah.
It's my most quoted line. It is my favorite line in the movie. It is a complete throwaway. When he walks off the camera to pick up his ex-girlfriend and physically pick her up and carry her on screen, and she won't let him pick him up, and he does it anyway.
Yeah.
He goes, it's like boating a marlin. And I say that whenever I pick up my kids. I say that like literally when I'm picking one of my kids up to throw them in bed or whatever. I'll say, like my wife just nodded. She heard me say that. Like I will say like it's like boating a marlin. I'll say it if I have to pick up a dog, anything I have to pick up that's heavy. I will say that line. It's like my favorite line.
That's one actually where you can kind of feel like Karen Ellen was not prepared to be brought up. At that point, she was ready for a kiss later on. Like they said, okay, you're gonna wait, and then we're gonna push you on camera, and then you'll kiss him, and it'll be a beautiful ending. But he's like, come here, and it all made it on. Also, last thing, there's so much to talk about with Scrooged, and it's not even an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. The argument that I've already made. But I will say there's just a random Little Shop of Horrors reference at the end when he's singing to the theater, like we're literally watching the credits, and he's like, all right, you in the theater, like singing. And then he walks up like Phoebe Seymour, because I guess Little Shop of Horrors had come out. And I
will just say, and then we'll stop. When you first introduced this idea to me about it not being an adaptation, I was horrified. I completely agree with you now. And the thing that was the hinge for me, well, there's a bunch of them, but the other than the Ghost of Christmas Future, the ghosts don't match up at all with their counterparts at all.
Mm-hmm.
They take ideas and they're really free with the ideas and smashing them together, which I'm okay. Like Marley and Fezziwig basically become the same character, which is a strange combo.
That's weird.
And Loudermilk and Cratchit but are kind of the same, except that Cratchit is really his assistant, Alfred Woodard. So it's just
the relationship, like, God, Phil, next year report series 2, we will do 4 episodes on Scrooged, because the power.
Because we got to talk about Captain Picard.
But we do. But I just want to say, like, because it's important, the power dynamic between Scrooge and Cratchit in Scrooged, which is Frank Cross and it's Alfred Woodard.
I don't know her character's name. But
I don't know her character's name. Bad on us. But the power dynamic is not the same as a Scrooge Cratchit. Like, she talks back to him. She's like, she has power against him, which is great. I mean, it's great for the movie. It's a good conflict to have. But, like, it's not an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. She's very put upon. I mean, he takes advantage of her left and right. But she also has a voice. But she also has a voice against him. It's Grace. Her name is Grace.
Come on.
I just want the viewers to know I didn't have to look it up, because he says, like, the towel was, or the VCR was from Grace. He gives his brother a VCR. Okay, before we move on to Picard, there is one thing, and I want to blow your mind with.
Okay.
I'm going to blow your mind with it. But I have another adaptation that is not an adaptation. So you viewers or listeners, because we're going to make this available by audio, but you can, as I'm telling you, and Phil, I don't want you to guess until you're 1,000% sure. But you viewers or listeners, you can also feel free to guess along in the comments as we webcast this. But there is a movie that I think it ties in a lot of what we've talked about English, like an English take on A Christmas Carol versus an American take on A Christmas Carol. I think it's very much in the same vein as the American version that I talked about. How that it's kind of less interested in Scrooge as a character. There's an adaptation that I believe is an adaptation of A Christmas Carol that doesn't give a crap about Scrooge at all. He's not a main character. The main character is Bob Cratchit. Scrooge is a minor character in it. And so instead of telling the story of Ebenezer Scrooge and his transformation, because this movie doesn't think that Ebenezer Scrooge is convertible. It thinks that Ebenezer Scrooge is pure evil, and you're never going to do anything about that. But the story is about Bob Cratchit, who is, I wouldn't say he's downtrodden. Worse, he's discouraged. But he experiences a visitation, much like A Christmas Carol. He sees a parallel universe. This visitation, this ghost, shows him an alternate reality, just like Scrooge sees. Remember, the Ghost of Christmas Present, none of those scenes actually happen later in the story. Because this person changed. This person sees an alternate reality in which they've never been born.
Oh my God.
And Bob Cratchit not only overcomes
I get
discouragement,
got me.
he gets to learn that he has power in the world, which even in A Christmas Carol, Bob Cratchit gets helped by Scrooge, but he doesn't get his own power in the world. And of course, I'm talking about.
I'm with you. Okay, so before I give the right answer, the wrong answer, but for a minute when you were describing it, I thought you were describing Christmas Vacation. Because for a moment, until you got to the visit from a spirit, because then I'm like, is that when he's looking out the window at the pool and he visualizes? That's not what I mean.
No. All right, so you want to tell us what I think is
It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
You're describing It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
The characters in the story, they don't all line up exactly, of course not.
No.
But very much in the way that the American.
Like the famous shot is him holding, what is it, Zuzu? Like holding her up.
Yeah. Oh, just like Tiny Tim. Oh, I love that. Oh, yeah.
Like God bless us, everyone.
Yeah.
Like, look, she's the one who says the line, right? Like, look, Daddy, every time a bell rings, right? Which is like the Cratchit version of God bless us, everyone.
There you go.
It's a Wonderful Life. Oh my God, I love it.
So that's a tease for season 2 of the Fezziwig Report as well, because we could deconstruct that movie for hours and hours. We're not going to, but we spent so much time on Scrooge. I still wanted to get that in there that it's my assertion that It's a Wonderful Life is a very American take on A Christmas Carol, because at heart, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is a story he wanted to tell to encourage people to be charitable. And that's an American idea too. But I think at its heart, the fabric of our American nation and our American experiment, when it's going well, and let's just be honest,
right,
it doesn't always go well. Certainly, we're not going to get into it, but it's certainly it's something you always have to work on.
We're really testing the strength of that right now. But go ahead.
But the spirit of our American idealism is that everybody can succeed, no matter who you are.
And the idea of whether or not Scrooge is reformed, Cratchit has a place.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not a story. It's not a story about let's make sure the rich guy is charitable. It's a story about let's make sure everyone understands their value and everybody understands.
When you said you were going to blow my mind, I thought you were going to surprise me and I was going to enjoy it. But you actually blew my mind. And I'm super happy. I apologize for ever doubting that. I love this. This is like,
didn't I blow your mind this time, didn't I? Okay, we interrupt our discussion because we've had such a fruitful, unexpectedly robust discussion during adaptation, not an adaptation, that we've decided to pin the Patrick Stewart, aka Captain Picard, A Christmas Carol until our next episode. What we're going to do is in classic Star Trek fashion, we're going to split this into a two-parter. That way we get the best of both worlds. Because like Time's Arrow, we just have to keep moving on.
Are we going boldly where we've never gone before as a podcast? Is that not? I shouldn't have.
Absolutely. So Phil,
I shouldn't try.
So I want to say thank you for a really great discussion. We're going to pick this up with tomorrow with Captain Picard in A Christmas Carol in the TNT 1999 version. We'll talk about a charitable organization that we'd like you all to consider a contribution towards. I'll put the link in today. It's Wise Readers to Leaders, and I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. And Phil, thanks again. What a great FEZZIWIG.
It's been fun. Let's go back at it tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, everyone.